today's project, we're going to be replacing a bathroom faucet. A couple things I wanted to kind of point out before you get it started on a project like this. One thing that's very helpful to do is to try to remove the doors or drawers in the cabinet itself, so you have plenty of room to be able to work in here. It'll make this process go a lot easier for working in a tight space. The next thing is you want to test out your shutoff valves to make sure that they shut off all the way. Otherwise, you're going to need to go and turn it off at the main portion of the house, and then address the faucet itself. If the shutoff valves don't shut off all the way, I would recommend replacing them at the same time, so that way you know that they're going to be available and ready to use in the case of an emergency. So the way to test it is basically just to turn on the water and then just turn off the shutoff valve like that. That squeaking noise is quite normal. That's just the rubber washer. Turning off the cold one. These things work beautifully. So we're in a fortunate position where we don't have to replace the shutoff valves at this time. The next step I like to do in this process is I'd like to take the actual handles that are on shutoff valves like this, and I like to rotate them to where it allows me to be able to access the lower portion of the supply line without having the handle actually interrupt the flow of motion when you're using your wrench. So I just take a moment to just kind of turn those. Makes life easier. Here in a second, I'm going to be taking these shutoff valves and disconnecting them from the supply lines. So what I've done here is I've taken the step of putting down a towel, and then I've taken a little like trim painting bucket. I'm going to use that to kind of catch any water that may come from the supply lines, the shutoff valves, or even the trap here. It just saves spills and damage towards the wood of the vanity that we got here. And what I use is typically just an adjustable crescent wrench like this. As you see, it's dripping. It's also dripping black water, and that might be a little surprising to some folks, but for the most part, inside the shutoff valve here and also the base of this supply line is a rubber washer, and those are black washers, and those will actually cause the water to be black a little bit, so don't be too surprised there. When you go to actually turn the water back on, you're going to find that it's going to cause the water to come out of the actual top of the faucet, and it's going to be black as well for the same reason. It's just the rubber has a tendency to kind of deteriorate over time. It's kind of the first step. And then I will go and take other elements apart. Like I'm taking out a portion of the pop-up assembly that attaches to the faucet itself, because we're going to also be replacing this pop-up assembly here. And so we're going to be taking out this P-trap, and so I'm going to take that as well out right now. We are blessed in being able to kind of take this apart by hand. If that is not a possibility because it's too tight for some reason, you will need to use a bigger set of plumbing pliers. The advantage of taking out this P-trap now is twofold. One, it's in the way. It's something that you're going to have to address anyhow later on. So what you're finding here is quite common. There are some hairs that are coming out from this pop-up assembly, so those are quite common in bathrooms where you have people with long hair. What I'd like to do now is I like to take this P-trap and I go and I just pour it into the toilet itself, just because I want to just store it somewhere, and it's kind of hard to store it and it's filled with water. I'm just going to set this aside for the reinstallation in a little bit. Now there's a portion of this lower part of the pop-up assembly that you're going to want to reuse for the top portion of the P-trap, so save that for later on. And then for the most part, this is just kind of like this very mechanical demo. You're going to be taking out certain elements that you're going to be replacing with the new ones that are in the faucet. Sometimes faucets actually don't come with a pop-up assembly, so it's kind of recommended to do that because there's certain elements in here that go bad, and if you're going to be replacing the faucet, you might as well address this at the same time. And as you can see here, there's plenty of room to be able to work, so I'm going to take out the rest of this pop-up assembly here. So I wanted to show you this actual faucet that we're going to be replacing. This here is a single lever faucet. You can also see that this actual sink base itself has just a single hole. If it has 3 holes, then you're going to have to purchase one that has a plate that will cover up the additional holes that are there. But this is a kind of a streamlined look That's pretty common in a lot of faucets these days. And then this is the pop-up assembly we're about to pull out and replace. What you're going to find here is a nut that holds up top portion of this pop-up assembly. So you're going to need to unscrew this. And so best tools to do that would be a set of channel locks like these. And so you just kind of hold the base of this thing here and then just kind of clamp around it and then just unscrew it. At some point you can feel that it has loosened up to where you can just unscrew it by hand. For the most part, a lot of these fixtures are made out of brass, so there's not really much corrosion that's there, so it can just unscrew all the way. But if there's instances where there's things that are made out of iron, it will rust, and then you're going to have to like use the wrench. At the top of this is a rubber washer and a metal washer. That metal washer is squishing that top rubber washer up to the base of the sink. When you release this, there might be some water that's going to drip out of there, part of the overflow aspect of the sink. And this rubber might also be deteriorated, and so it might make your hands black. So if you're so inclined, you may want to wear some, some rubber disposable gloves and stuff like that to take this stuff apart. So that's why I also have this towel down here. I can wipe my hands off, feel a little bit better about the removal of this thing here. Okay, when you go and pull out the top portion of this pop-up assembly or drain assembly, you're going to find there's something underneath it. It's going to be somewhat nasty. It's basically a plumber's putty in most instances. Sometimes it will be a clear caulk. So be prepared to be able to find a place to toss this out. Bring a plastic bag or something like that, even paper towels, and a sponge to be able to kind of clean this up as a way of preparing it for when you go and reassemble the new pop-up assembly. And as you see here, when I'm trying to clean this thing up, it's also going to fall down into the cabinet down below. And so that's where that towel is helpful for, not only absorbing any moisture, but it also will handle any of this biomatter, also the plumber's putty and all that kind of stuff that's there. And because it's there, I'm just going to use it kind of like you would a drain and just have it fall down there. And so I have a nice clean surface to work with up here. And there's the advantage of having the paper towels and also the rubber gloves. One thing I like to do is I like to be able to have the box that comes with the new faucet up here. So not only is it all the supplies that I need from the faucet that I'm going to install, it's also a good place to be able to take the parts that I'm removing from the old faucet as a way to be able to keep things nice and clean and organized and not all over the floor, that kind of thing. And then I'll just take the box and everything out when I'm done to process it for recycling. Another thing I like to do in terms of making this project go a little easier is I like to take into consideration putting down things like this foam pad, because it helps for comfort, because you're dealing with some hard surfaces here, and it's just easier on the body for dealing with having to be underneath this sink. Next process of removing the faucet is really going to vary based on the brand or the manufacturers of the faucets that you have. So this is just going to be the application that we're using for the removal of this faucet here. The supply lines here are attached to the base of the faucet, so they're kind of in the way. And the fact that you're going to be removing and disposing of this faucet, you can just go ahead and just kind of cut them off. That way it gives you a little bit more room to get to remove the mounting plate that's holding the faucet to the base of the sink. And so I use just some side cutters. I just try to cut them as close as I can to the base of the sink itself. They're mostly cut, so I think I just kind of pull and rip them off. Ultimately, that's trying to get you a little bit more elbow room up here. The challenges of working in here is the gap between the base of the sink itself here and the back of the vanity. So there are some various tools that will help you for that. For the most part, these bolts here are holding this plate to the base of the sink itself, and so you need to remove these bolts so that the rest of the faucet can just go up and be pulled out. You just want to loosen it up, and it's going to just take some time and some patience to be able to try to get it out. It looks like because these things are, again, brass and not corroded, all I needed to do was loosen it up a little bit, and then I can just unscrew it, and that will allow me to get this thing off pretty quickly. Some instances, when you can't unscrew these things like this, you actually have to use a reciprocating saw and just cut the whole bad boy off from the top. We're kind of blessed in this situation here. So for the most part, this plate is what's holding the base of that faucet there, and so we can just go pull that thing out right now. Now that I've removed the faucet, all you basically are going to do is kind of reverse the way you disassembled everything by reassembling it in the order that I just showed you. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the faucet and place it in here. Now this faucet comes with two different options. There's this thing here that would cover up a 3-hole sink, but in this instance there isn't one, so this thing is basically an extra part. And so in this instance, where there's only one hole, you're going to use this O-ring here that's provided with the faucet, and you're going to just feed it over these two supply lines, or feed the supply lines through the O-ring, and then place it on the bottom of the base of the faucet, and then feed the supply lines through the hole here. And you're going to attach it from below. But you're basically going to need to kind of apply pressure to the top of this faucet while also securing it from below. What I want to do is I want to show you how you're going to basically attach the faucet to the countertop. You're going to use this washer here. You have a rubber side, and that is going to go towards the actual bottom of the sink itself. You're going to feed it through like that, and then you're going to take this nut here and you're going to feed it onto it like that. Okay, so what you're doing is you're feeding that washer on, like I was saying, with the rubber side facing up towards the actual sink itself. And then you're going to be screwing on this nut here. You can do most of it by hand, but the neat thing about this faucet, it comes with a type of like nut driver. It's a plastic thing that comes with it that will allow you to be able to secure it all the way up versus having to use an adjustable wrench. So here you go. Basically, you're just going to put it right over that nut itself. And from the top, I am holding the faucet in place so that it basically faces directly towards the drain itself. It has a hole on the side of this plastic nut driver where you can go and put a screwdriver into it to be able to torque it down a little bit more. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be attaching the supply lines that are already attached to the faucet and connecting them to the shutoff valves. The neat thing about this brand here is it does indicate which side is the hot side, so I usually just connect that first so I don't forget. You basically take off these protective caps to the end of the supply lines themselves, and you'll attach them to that shutoff valve. One thing I do to the supply line, apply a little bit of plumber's putty to the tip of the shutoff valves there where it connects to the supply lines, and so it gives it that bond it will need to be able to secure it, a nice watertight fit. And so I'll just hand tighten these things one at a time, and then I'll tighten it down with my adjustable wrench. That's the one side, and here's the other. I usually will take the supply lines and I'll kind of curl them a little bit, kind of take up the slack, because they are a little bit longer than needed for these shutoff valves that are attached to the wall. They're basically designed to be able to have these things be universal for either a faucet that has some supply lines that are coming out through the floor. Most of the time they're going to come out through this wall, and so you're going to have this little extra slack that you need to kind of just deal with. And so, like I was saying, I just kind of curled it up a little bit. Basically, that faucet is attached and could run. So if I turned on these shutoff valves and then turn on the faucet, it would run. But as you can see, we don't have a drain line, so we need to connect that now. Next, you're going to take some plumber's putty. I'd like to go ahead and pull out a healthy amount, and then I will kind of roll it to a point where it's about the size of maybe your pinky, and then I'll take the top portion of the pop-up assembly and I will put it around the rim of it. And you do want a healthy amount on there, because when it actually meets up with the top of the sink, the remnants will squish out, but that's better than not having enough. So this is about how much you're going to want right there. And I have put the top portion of the pop-up assembly up onto the base of the sink and sat it there with the plumber's putty. I like to take and put a little bit of this pipe dope onto the top portion of this pop-up assembly, where it will kind of meet that ring that attaches it to the top. And then I also will put it down here where this rubberized washer is going to kind of compress and squeeze this fitting to the base of the sink. And so I'm going ahead and going to feed this through like that, and I'm going to hold it from the top and just kind of twist it so that it attaches to that top chrome piece. And then I like to get it in a position where the back portion of this pop-up assembly faces the back there. And then I go and I will tighten this on by hand. And when I do that, I'm going to pull down with my hands here and just kind of crank this thing up by hand. And so what it's doing is it's pushing this plastic and rubberized washer up basically to clamp the portion of this drain assembly to the actual base of the sink. Now that rubberized washer there is probably enough for what is needed to provide a good seal between the base of the sink and this drain line. But again, I like that Teflon pipe dope to be able to add an additional layer of a seal. And then I'll take these channel locks and I'll just kind of take and twist this sort of gently. This is a plastic piece here that came with the faucet, so you don't want to over tighten it because then you'll mess up the threads, but you basically want to do it to where you see this washer just kind of squeeze in nice and tight between the plastic washer, which is this little white one, and the rubberized one to the base of this sink. So just kind of good hand tight. You see here when I went and squeezed the pipe onto the base of the sink, it squeezed out the rest of the plumber's putty, or the excess of it. So you just clean up a little bit of it right now, and you'll clean up the rest in a little bit. So you just toss it into a little pail, and then you just take the actual stopper, and you're going to have this portion of it here face the back of the sink itself. What I like to do is I like to take more of this pipe thread sealant, and I go and I will place it around the threads of the mechanism that operates the pop-up assembly. It's just an abundance of protection. Here are the three pieces that are necessary for attaching the arm assembly. So what you're going to want to do is this portion is going to attach to that pipe, and you're going to feed that arm through it, and then you're taking this little extra little washer and you're feeding it over the little ball end of it here, and then you're going to take and feed it through the base of it, and then take that little O-ring and place it into that portion of the threaded section there, and then just go ahead and screw this on and do that kind of hand tight. The next process is to take the actual handle that pulls up the stopper and place it into the back of this faucet. In some instances it is too tight to be able to try to feed it into the back of this faucet, especially with these single handle ones. So what you need to do is you actually kind of need to twist the faucet itself and then feed it through like this, and then twist it back, and then you can feel that it's still good and tight. The next process is to take and attach this portion here to the section that you fed through the back of the faucet itself. So you're going to need to take and feed it through, and you're going to need to tighten it with an adjustable wrench. Next phase is to take this little clip here, which has a couple holes, and you feed one section through it here, and then you feed the other extension of the handle that's at the back of the faucet, and you feed it through to where that clip kind of clips onto it, and so that it grabs it tight. And so when you go and pull the handle back here, it operates it just like that. One of the last steps of the process is to go ahead and attach this P-trap to the actual drain line, and so you're going to pull out the pipe thread sealant again, and I like to apply that in areas that you typically would use Teflon tape. So I'm going to do that there, and then I'll also do it on the top portion here. And what I will do is I'll take the top portion of this drain here, and I will go and put it up here, and then I'll go and take some more of this pipe dope and put it up here, and then take the P-trap and feed it up through that pipe to where I can connect this bottom portion of it here, and I'll go ahead and hand tighten it, and then I'll take this top one and bring it down and hand tighten it as well, and then I'll take the channel locks and I'll go ahead and tighten it just a little bit with the extra leverage that it provides for both the top portion and the bottom portion of that P-trap. Now, because this stuff is plastic, you don't want to over tighten it. So I finally finished attaching the drain line to the bottom portion of this pop-up assembly. So this sink is ready to go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to turn on the supply shut-off valves to the on position to be able to provide water to this faucet and see how it goes down the drain and goes down this P-trap to make sure that it doesn't leak. I'm turning on the hot side first. You can do either. I just choose to do that. It's in the off position up here at the faucet itself, and so I'm just turning it on down below. We'll make a little bit of a squeaking noise, and that's the sound of the washer just making a little bit of a squeaky turn. And now I'm going to turn on the cold side, and so I'm doing that again. I'm kind of opening up the shut-off valve, and then I'm going to show you by bringing it up here to the actual faucet itself. I'm turning it to the cold side, and what you will see is it's going to run black water for just a second. See how it kind of collected into the sink? That's just the residual bit of the rubber washer, and that just cleans up easily. Okay, so now I basically want to run the water, and what I'll do is I will fill up the base of the sink with hot water and engage the stopper. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and filled up the sink to the portion where the water goes through the overflow of the sink itself. One thing I like to do is I like to take some paper towels, a good sheet that has about 3 panels, and I go and I place it down here underneath the actual sink itself to where when I'm running this thing, it'll be able to identify whether there's any leaks or not. So I'm going to head and open up the stopper here to the sink. I put hot water in here because what I'm wanting to do, I'm wanting to test this thing out with like a bunch of extreme elements. You know, the most amount of water, the most amount of heat, to see if the P-trap here has any drips or not. And if there was any drips on it, you'd be able to see it on that paper towel. So that paper towel is there to identify it and also absorb anything if there's any issues. The last part is just to go ahead and remove the residual amount of plumber's putty at the top of the pop-up assembly, and then just clean things up. So that's the way you install a faucet. Requires a lot of techniques, some tools, and give yourself some time, but you'll be able to do it with no problem. So that's pretty much all the steps that you need to take in replacing a faucet. I guess one last thing, if the faucet does not provide supply lines, it is best to replace them with new ones. So that's today's Mr. Fix-It Tip.